So in this video, we're going to talk about keys and relationships. I'm going to jump ahead. And just to review, we said in a spreadsheet world, these terms, you can think of them as the same thing. The terms vary based on who you are talking to. So we know in spreadsheets we see sheets or tabs. In data modeling, that world, it's called an entity, data entity. Data design, you might call it a relation. And in a database, it's called a table. Similarly, a row in a spreadsheet is an instance in the modeling world. It's an instance in the data design world. And in the database world, instance or row. Column is an attribute, or attribute is a column in a database. And then we describe this thing called an identifier, which is one or more attributes that uniquely describe one instance of an entity. And that's known as, you may have heard this term before, key or primary key, or later we'll talk about foreign key. So what is that thing, that key? Let's start there, and then we'll move to relationships. And you will notice in your tech plugin document, they talk about when you're done with an ERD, entity relationship diagram, when you've done that data model, it moves into a formal data model, which will eventually be built into a database management system. And they talk about some of this, but we'll just quickly go through it. And here it defines a primary key, makes it possible to uniquely identify every instance or row in a table. And primary keys are actually very important. We can treat primary key as the same as an identifier, which we referred to earlier. If we move down, let's look at one. That's the easiest way to understand it. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 different tables, just a snapshot of them, a few rows. And the customer table, here's that customer number, which is the primary key, which is the identifier, which is the attribute which guarantees me one row. And if we look at the order entity table, if you will, here's this order number, which is a primary key or an identifier, because knowing it, order number 1001, guarantees me this particular order. Sorry, order number 1001. And we'll skip over order line for a moment, but then we'll look at item, and item has a primary key, item number. That's also the identifier. It's the attribute which guarantees me item number 9250 refers to this Lord of the Rings. I imagine it's a video. So those are keys, and that's very important. Now, also important is relationships. Now, relationships are another one of these ideas. Not really easy when you first hear about it, but once you visualize it, you see it, you play with it, it's actually pretty easy to understand. So I'm going to stop here for now. This is about keys, and let's move on in the next video for relationships.